Well, tonight on Here and Now, the federal government's plan to tackle a crisis.
It's certainly the boldest and I think most comprehensive and inclusive plan we've seen in a long time.
Big money for a big problem. We'll break down how the federal government plans to get more housing here.
We've had our crews on the scene all night.
Hung out to dry in CBS. A water main break affected thousands of households and gave children an unexpected break from school.
Bank Theatre in St. John's to catch the pre-screening of a major Canadian movie. Which one that is, I'll have all that information coming up on Here and Now.
This is CBC Here and Now.
Well, good evening and welcome to Here and Now. We begin tonight with reaction to the federal government's plans to deal with the housing crisis. Like everywhere else in the country, people here are struggling to find affordable rentals or to break into the housing market. And the federal government is trying to help with that. They're dedicating big money to housing in their budget, including $8.5 billion in new spending. Those plans include converting underused federal offices into homes and building homes on Canada Post properties. They're also rethinking national defense properties and hoping to build more apartments. Ottawa is also looking at building homes on vacant land, and they're considering a new tax on residentially zoned vacant land. And they're updating how student housing costs are calculated when figuring out loans. But a local housing advocate says while it's a bold plan, they were hoping to see more help for renters.
I think what we've seen are certain things like a rental protection fund to help nonprofits, charities, co-ops to acquire properties and preserve affordable housing. So that can go a long way too. In addition to it, it's when we have to think about things that take time to build or roll out over multiple years that we'll see that lag. And that's where the housing benefit and rental subsidies can come in and stem a lot of the challenges immediately.
Well, Ottawa has promised to unlock nearly 3.9 million homes by 2031, and they say 2 million of those will be net new homes. A report from the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation says Newfoundland and Labrador will need 60,000 of those homes by 2030. The Home Builders Association of Newfoundland and Labrador says the province's best year saw 3,300 new housing starts. That's only a third of what's needed in a year. The group says Ottawa's plans are a good start, but more needs to be done.
There's some of the programs that have been put out that they can go further. There's been quite a focus on affordable housing, losing sight of housing affordability. They're two completely different things. We need all types of housing, however, in order to make housing more affordable. And I think the CMHC numbers are still 60,000 for the Newfoundland population is what we need, 60,000 new homes in the next 6 years. So that's 10,000 starts a year, which is a lot more than what we've been doing.
And how will the federal government pay for all of this on top of everything else in the budget? Well, they're spending nearly $53 billion more than planned over the next 5 years. They'll post a $40 billion deficit this year and spend $54 billion to service the growing debt. And that's more than what's being spent on health care this year. But government is hoping to bring in more than $21 billion in new money, in part by raising taxes on cigarettes and vaping products and by hiking taxes on the rich.
In the long term, it can affect families who have a second property or rental properties or own a small business. And you've got to be careful there because there's some small business exemptions on certain types of business. It's complicated. The net effect is the vast majority of people that are going to be affected are the very wealthy in the immediate term, and it may affect other people over the next number of years.
And we'll have more local reaction to the federal budget later in the show. Thousands of people in Conception Bay South have low or no water pressure after a water main break in the town center. The break also left 9 schools there closed for the day. Some other residents saw flooding outside their homes. The break has also shut down recreation facilities. It happened yesterday afternoon around 3:30 on Anchorage Road in the Long Pond area. Crews are working on repairing the main transmission water line coming into the town. But Mayor Darren Bent says there were some complications.
Our crews worked to find the leak. They did, and repaired it around 2:30 in the morning. When they cleared the line and then recharged it with water, another break occurred about 40 feet away from the original break, and since that time they've been working to repair the second break. So that's where they are now.
And repair work is finally underway at 2 closed sections of a road on the west coast of the island. This bridge on the Lewin Parkway near Corner Brook has been closed for years, causing lengthy detours through the city. Engineers are on site this week preparing to replace specifically designed support bearings. The Transportation Department says the bridge work should be finished later this year, and major structural issues at a westbound ramp near Massey Drive are also being addressed after 2 winters. The municipal water line has been moved, which contractors are working on now. Work there should be completed this fall. Part of a house near Churchill Square in St. John's collapsed earlier today. This is how the home on Rowan Street looked this afternoon. Someone was in the house when it collapsed. The homeowners told CBC News they heard loud creaking and the sounds of glass shattering, but they say everyone inside the home is okay, including pets. It's not clear yet what caused the collapse. And there were some dramatic moments at Supreme Court in St. John's today where a lawyer is on trial for sexual assault. An error by the judge sparked questions about how the case should proceed. The CBC's Rob Antle has the details.
Robert Regular is facing 4 counts of sexual assault and 1 of sexual interference, all related to one alleged victim, a woman who's now in her mid-30s. That complainant spent 3 days on the stand last week. But the judge in the case made a mistake, restricting what questions the Crown could ask her about an investigation by CERT into unrelated allegations she had made against a police officer. The defense called 2 investigators with the police oversight watchdog to testify today. But then proceedings bogged down over what happened last week, and things got tense. Regular's lawyer, Jerome Kennedy, accused the Crown of engineering a problem. This was a Crown not acting properly. It was an ambush. She set it up. The judge rejected that, saying she didn't ambush anybody. It falls on me. Now we have to fix it. One of the options, letting the Crown reopen its case to bring the complainant back to the stand. In the end, the Crown opted against doing that. Last week, the complainant testified she felt pressured by CERT to proceed. Today, its lead investigator said that wasn't the case. Absolutely not. CERT didn't lay charges against the officer. In a public statement at the time, it cited major inconsistencies in the complainant's story. Rob Antle, CBC News, St. John's.
The MHA for Torngat Mountains is warning there will be dire consequences if access to mental health services doesn't improve in Labrador. Evans says she's been writing health officials with specific cases where individuals and families can't get the help they need.
Are my people who are experiencing psychosis, are they going to be ignored until somebody is seriously injured or killed? Right? And we've already had serious injuries from people experiencing psychosis. We've had stabbings, we've had violent attacks, and in my emails, I write about the issues, and I say I'm documenting this. Because if you're aware of it and you don't take steps to help us, you're liable.
Well, the health minister asked Leila Evans to bring any cases that may have fallen through the cracks to his department's attention. After question period, Tom Osborne said this to reporters.
So based on the question today, I did reach out to the COO for Lab Grenfell Health. I do understand that there are psychiatrists in the Lab Grenfell zone. The wait list for services is not lengthy. There are several other services that are available once somebody gets a diagnosis. There are services such as doorways, for example, mobile crisis units that are available. There are several other services available in the zone.
Good evening. And in the weather, look at this. It's this low. That's going to be our weather maker over the next 24 hours or so, bringing snow and rain and all sorts of yucky weather to the province. We still have a special weather statement in effect from Environment Canada. It could bring 10 to 20 centimeters to the Notre Dame Bay area over the north coast of the island. From Gander to Grand Falls, we could see about 5 to 10 centimeters. Here in the east, looking more like 2 to 4 centimeters, followed though by 10 to 20 millimeters of rain. What's on the way? The flurries get started for the northeast coast tonight, and it's going to be drizzle changing over to the snow, really. Quiet night for Labrador for tonight and even into tomorrow. And then for the east, it's more going to be like snow, rain, snow, changing back to rain. So it's not going to be lovely for central and east. So this is the snow rain mix here in central, and that's going to eventually push its way eastward. We'll talk about all of that and the mess that's on the way a little later on Here Now.
Thanks so much, Heather. Well, the local film industry is growing, and so is government investment. More internationally successful movies and TV shows are being filmed in this province than ever before. One of those movies is The King Tide. And on top of being shot here, the director is also a Newfoundlander. There's a special screening of the film at the St. John Scotiabank Theatre tonight, and the CBC's Ife Alaba is live on the red carpet right now. So Ife, what's the atmosphere like there tonight?
The atmosphere is great. Things are just starting. I'm very excited to be here at the local premiere of The King Tide happening here tonight. And joining me here is the movie director, Christian Sparks. Congratulations, and thank you so much for talking to me. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I mean, I grew up watching movies in this theater, so to screen it for friends and family tonight is pretty exciting.
Without giving too much away, what can people expect when they watch the movie?
I would say it's kind of a propulsive thriller. It's about a young girl with magical powers that washes up on the shore of a Newfoundland town, and they keep that girl to herself and cut themselves off from the rest of the world, and they live in paradise for about 10 years until things start going wrong, and then suddenly the plot thickens and the tension rises, and so it's a tense film with beautiful landscapes and great performances.
That sounds amazing. You are originally from St. John's. Why was it so important that the film was produced here?
Well, the film I was brought onto this project late after it was written, and it was written to be in Newfoundland. But, 3 of my 4 features have taken place in Newfoundland. And when I was younger, I used to try and get away from Newfoundland quickly. I couldn't get away fast enough. But over time, I realized it was, a truly special place. And I love telling stories about this place.
The movie was shot in Kills, which has about 50 people living there. Why was it shot there?
Well, I mean, it's getting harder and harder to find kind of isolated towns that have the texture you want, like the peeling clapboard, and have that kind of rugged landscape and coastline. And Keels was perfect for us. It's just small enough to be secluded from the rest of the world, and even the way the topography works, it feels like it's hidden away. So it's perfect for a thriller.
So the industry is growing. Compared to when your career started, how do you feel about the industry now?
I'm excited. I'm glad to be a part of it. I mean, I graduated film school in 2005. YouTube was just starting at that point. And now there's countless videos online. People can educate themselves about film in so many ways. And you can see that with young people coming up. You don't even necessarily need to go to film school anymore. You can learn so much online. I did. I loved it, and I'd recommend it to people. But there's so many options out there for people now.
Thank you so much for talking to me, and once again, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for speaking with me.
The King's Tide is set to premiere in theaters on the 26th of April. That is next week Friday. For me, I'm going to watch the screening, and I'll catch you later. I'm Ife Alaba signing off on Here and Now.
And in the weather, we are going to talk a little bit more about all of the snow and the rain that is on the way. We've got that ahead on Here and Now.
This weather update is brought to you by the Healthcare Foundation Home Lottery. The bonus prize deadline is midnight, Friday, April 12th. Order tickets now at hcfhomelottery.ca.
Well, Heather, you have been pretty busy, right? With all the weather on the way. I know everyone wants to know about the snow.
The dreaded spring snow.
Bound to happen.
It is. It's Newfoundland after all. But look, behind me there is a little bit of hope. I don't know if I should even call it hope, but St. Anthony broke a weather record yesterday, 9.3 degrees. Breaking the old record by an entire degree that was set back in the 60s. Taking a look at our highs today, we did still get into the double digits for St. John's in some areas along the south coast. We can see 12 here in Marystown, but into the single digits everywhere else for the island pretty well, and cooler up along that north coast where we're going to get that snow starting tonight. A couple of degrees in Cartwright, warmish in Mary's Harbour, and 4 in Happy Valley Goose Bay, but freezing or below for northern and western Labrador. Taking a look at our future tracker now. So it's pretty quiet across Labrador. We could have a chance of flurries in some areas, but mostly cloudy. You guys are really kind of sitting this whole weather event out. Not a whole pile to talk about for you guys, but what we will see here along this north coast, Notre Dame Bay area, it's going to be drizzly, changing over to snow later tonight. You could have a risk of freezing drizzle on top of it, and then it's going to push in the overnight and spread a little bit by morning, and will still be rain on the east part for the Avalon Peninsula. Tonight, temperatures between 0 and 1 here in the east. We've got drizzle. We've got risk of freezing drizzle and fog for some areas. Winds up to 40 from the northwest. We've got that snow starting to develop tonight through central, with your temperature dropping back below freezing for the Grand Falls, Windsor area. And for the southwest coast, you do not have sun tonight. In fact, you will have a chance of flurries, just like Corner Brook at 0. Picking up some more clouds through the straits. You could see a flurry for St. Anthony. Clear skies in Happy Valley Goose Bay, and some cloud elsewhere in Labrador. Chilly temperatures for you folks. Talking about the snow and the accumulation, we could see over higher terrain a little bit more snow, and we see it concentrated here on this northeast coast. We could see 5 to 10 centimeters between Gander, Grand Falls, Windsor, and then east, it'll be a little bit more rain. And we're going to look at that as well. We can see the rain kind of more here in the east, and it gets a little darker green right here over the northeast Avalon. So it looks like that's where we will see the 10 to 20 millimeters of rain for us. Taking a look at the winds are also going to pick up as we move through Thursday. You can see as the system starts to push away from the island, it's going to take the winds eastward with it. Taking a look at tomorrow now. For St. John's, I've got an asterisk here by that 2 degrees because in the early morning it'll be 2 degrees, but our temperature will drop back to about the freezing mark tomorrow. So it's kind of like a bit false there. So I put an asterisk there to remind myself that the temperature will drop back a little bit. And what we will see here for the northeast Avalon is starting out as rain. We could transition late in the afternoon to 2 to 4 centimeters of snow, and we've got about 5 millimeters there for our rain. For the southern Avalon, we could see 5 to 10 millimeters of rain. You can see some mixing in there in the pink areas on the screen as well. For the Bonavista Peninsula, it's going to start out as drizzle as well. You could transition later in the afternoon to 2 to 5 centimeters of snow. For the Marystown area, 1 degree. I've got the snow there. Here, you're going to get about 2 to 4 centimeters, it looks like. As we move on into central, where things really kind of heat up, between 0 and 1 degree here for central, and 2 to 4 for Grand Falls, Windsor is what we're going to get on top of whatever we get tonight. Could see 5 centimeters in Gander, and Twillingate you could see 2 to 10. It says 2 to 10 because it's 2 to 5, but 10 over areas of higher terrain. West Coast, look at this. Nice day for you guys. Some sun and cloud, decent temperatures, 7 for Burgeo, 2 to 3 for the West Coast. As we go on up to the Northern Peninsula, similar trend there. You could see a flurry in Mary's Harbor, possibility of one in Cartwright. And as we head up to the rest of Labrador, it looks like a nice day, quiet weather, some sun, some cloud, some decent temperatures as warm as 7 in Happy Valley Goose Bay, and light winds as well. We're going to talk about our long-range forecast later in the show because we didn't get to chat about it yesterday.
2 brothers fight, 1 dies. As Johanna Semiak faces his community, a new opportunity emerges for hope and change.
I got a purpose in life to be with my family, be with my kids. It made me realize I got a problem. I should fix it while I'm young.
I'm Heidi Adder in Hopedale, and coming up, we'll bring you that story.
Returning now to federal budget reaction, the federal government is planning $8.5 billion in new spending for housing with a goal of building nearly 4 million new homes by 2031. Housing as a big ticket item was no surprise given the struggle of many to find housing and a string of pre-budget funding announcements. But now we've learned some new details about government's plan. Doug Pawson, Event Homelessness St. John's, joins me now. So, Doug, housing is clearly a priority for government, but do you think that they're doing enough?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly been telegraphed through the many announcements that have been made over the last couple of weeks. In terms of what's been made invested in, it's certainly the boldest and I think most comprehensive and inclusive plan we've seen in a long time. The types of investments that the federal government's making, this year and throughout the next 4 to 5 years is more than any federal government we've seen in the last 30 years. So it's really bold, it's comprehensive and inclusive, and should help to tackle some of the challenges around housing and affordable housing.
Mm-hmm. You were hoping to see a little bit more, though, right? Before the budget was announced, we talked about a potential expansion to the Canada Housing Benefit, but that didn't really pan out.
Yeah, I think what we've seen are certain things like a rental protection fund to help nonprofits, charities, co-ops to acquire properties and preserve affordable housing. So that can go a long way too. In addition to it, it's when we have to think about things that take time to build or roll out over multiple years that we'll see that lag, and that's where the housing benefit and rental subsidies can come in and stem a lot of the challenges immediately.
Mm-hmm. Some interesting ideas, though. Government plans to convert underused federal offices into homes. It promises to spend $1.1 billion over 10 years to transfer half of its federal office portfolio into housing. What do you make of that idea?
Yeah, so the new Public Lands Fund, which is really a rebrand of the Federal Lands Initiative, is working with existing federal lands, working with provinces and municipalities to convert existing land and existing spaces into new homes. So, we see this in major centers where there's, office buildings that are no longer being used after the pandemic, being converted into housing. So that will add an approximate 250,000 units by 2031. So again, just taking advantage of existing infrastructure, existing land to make housing more available.
Yeah, and in a similar vein, the Canada Post offices, government says that 1,700 Canada Post offices can be used for housing while still maintaining postal services. How much do you think something like that could help here in this province?
Well, I think that's a really key thing for Newfoundland and Labrador, certainly across Atlantic Canada, where we still have those existing spaces in towns all around. So converting them to be used for housing, it makes sense. It certainly makes sense. It's a different use than what we would have seen, over the last 30, 40 years. And prior to that, post offices served as banks. So it's a good use of existing infrastructure and stretching every dollar further in that sense.
Yeah, it puts me in mind of the project that you're working on at the Comfort Inn, turning the hotel rooms into transitional housing. So you're in favor of this idea of repurposing existing structures to make new housing.
Yeah, I think we all recognize the importance of building new housing stock, but in the interim, how do we address the current homelessness, housing, and affordability crisis? We can repurpose existing assets like hotels, which have been done throughout the country over the last several years through the pandemic. Really trying to address both the immediate need that folks face, but also doing things that will allow you to get to those 3-4 years where those new homes have been built and people are able to move in.
Well, Doug Pawson, really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thanks again.
So how will government pay for the new housing and affordability measures it announced? Well, it will be leaning on the wealthy segment of the population to do that. Government hopes to generate $19.4 billion in revenue through changes to capital gains tax rules. Capital gains are the profits an individual or business earns when they sell assets like stocks or property. Larry Short is a financial advisor with Short Financial, and he joins me now. So Larry, I don't want to get too much into the weeds with you on this, but can you explain in the simplest terms possible how these capital gains taxes work?
So prior to this change, the taxation worked on the basis that half of your gain, half of your capital gain would be taken into your income. So let me just use an example. Let's say that you bought a cabin 30 years ago for $100,000. You sell it today for $500,000, so you have a $400,000 capital gain. Prior to this change, it would have meant that half of that $400,000 or $200,000 would come into your income, and you would pay tax on that $200,000 at your marginal tax rate. Let's say it was 50%. So you'd end up paying about $100,000 in tax on an entire $400,000 capital gain. With this change, it says the first $250,000 of that gain, so the $400,000 gain, you get a $250,000 piece. That $250,000 piece is taxed at the old rules, but anything above that $250,000 would be taxed having to pull in 66% of the income. So the first $250,000 is taxed at half the income comes in, and you pay tax on it. The next piece is taxed at 66%, and you have to pay tax on it. So it's a small increase in total amount of capital gains that have to be paid above the $250,000 amount.
So the majority of people watching likely won't have to worry about this tax, but can you explain who this is targeting?
Yeah, so just to work numbers backwards, the federal government is expecting that people will make some sales before June, before this particular tax provision cuts in. And in doing so, they're going to generate about $6.7 billion worth of taxes overall. And because the population of Newfoundland is about 1.25% of Canada, we can sort of work that backwards. And it would, if everything is the same, that is, if we're equally wealthy with the rest of Canada, we know we're not. There's much more wealthier individuals in other provinces, but just ballpark it and play with the numbers a bit. That would mean about a sale of $336 million worth of some sort of properties, where it's stocks, bonds, real estate, cottages, rental properties, etc., in the province. And it tends to be the top 1% of families. And if, again, roughly that affects about 2,400 to 2,700 households in this province.
Are you hearing from any clients or anything about this? Has anyone reached out to you concerned about what this will mean to them?
In our own office, we're going through an evaluation to review our clients to see if indeed it makes sense for them to make such a change between now and June.
Okay, Larry Short, as usual, really appreciate your perspective on this. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Well, tonight we take you to Hopedale to hear one man's story inside the Labrador Correctional Centre. Johannes Semiak is 35 years old, and for much of his life he's been incarcerated. There are deep issues at play here, a history of forced relocation, intergenerational trauma and addiction. But Semiak is trying to break that destructive cycle. Here Now's Heidi Adder brings us this feature report.
Johannes Semiak is coming home, but this time it's with an RCMP escort. This return is an important one. The 35-year-old is on his way to face the community he hurt 4 years ago when he killed his own brother. For Semiak, it's a full circle moment, coming back to where he says it all began.
My parents was alcoholics, but every summer we used to go up to the cabin for the whole summer because my dad had his own fishing license. But they never used to drink while we was at the cabin. But when it comes to school days, it was hard, I guess. Them going to school hungry, parents always drinking. My dad was relocating.
Semiak's family is from Hebron, on the northern tip of Labrador. In 1959, the province and Moravian Church closed the town. His father's family were forced to move more than 300 kilometers south to Hopedale, his mother's to Nain, away from their known hunting and fishing grounds.
And the government promised them new houses once they moved, but my mom said they never got no new houses until 10 years after they moved, 5-10 years. So it really impacted my grandparents because they had to live in tents for quite a bit of time.
Alcohol flowed freely from the nearby American base. With that came trouble.
I don't blame my dad for being an alcoholic, for what he sinned and what he went through. He went through horrible stuff. He was only a kid.
It all trickled down to Semiak and his 7 siblings. The same old story with the same consequences. Alcohol, death. 2 of his siblings died as teenagers, both by suicide. One of them, his brother Daniel.
That really impacted me. He was hard on me, but he was always there for me. He always kept me in line, I guess.
Semiak knows the Labrador Correctional Centre well. For years, most of his adult life, this has been his home. His addictions always bringing him back, but nothing in his criminal past has been as severe as what happened on November 19th, 2020.
Still to this day, I don't know what happened. I don't know how it happened.
An agreed statement of facts fills in the gaps. Semiak and his brother Thomas Tuglavina were drinking, happy. The two were friends, shared family, shared trauma. Court documents say early one morning there was a fight. A neighbor pulled Semiak off his brother before they both walked away.
The first thing I remember is going to my brother's apartment to drink and smoke weed, and I don't know what happened after that. I guess it was just drinking too fast, I guess. I still don't know what happened.
Later that day, Tuglavina went to the clinic with severe stomach pains. He died the same afternoon while waiting for the medevac. An autopsy showed the cause of death was internal bleeding. According to police, Semiak confessed to family that he kicked his brother in the stomach. It's a story that isn't rare here on Labrador's north coast. Sadly, quite the opposite. As a justice worker with the Nunatsiavut government, Erin Broomfield sees it firsthand.
Whether it was relocation, residential schools, the assimilation away from traditional Inuit life to more European mainstream ways, the loss of culture, the loss of language, the loss of traditions and more mainstream. Everything leads to a person being impacted by this intergenerational trauma. So far in my whole experience, I have not yet met anybody in the correctional system who's not been impacted by intergenerational trauma.
Jail gives you a lot of time to think, to reflect. Semiak says an Indigenous 21-day treatment program focused on intergenerational trauma, the effect of relocation and addictions, gave him a newfound clarity.
It made me realize I got a purpose in life to be with my family, be with my kids. It made me realize I got a problem. I should fix it while I'm young. And it made me go deep in my mind, I guess, to think about what really happened to me. Made me realize who I'm supposed to be, I guess.
Now he sees the potential for other men like him, and there are many. Statistics Canada says Indigenous people make up 5% of Canada's population. Yet, Indigenous people make up 32% of inmates in federal penitentiaries.
Think about it. How many people who are born and raised in the Isle of Newfoundland reflect deeply on what's going on with Indigenous people in Labrador? How many of us have even been to Labrador? Not very many, I don't think. I know I would never have probably gone there if it wasn't for being a lawyer. So we can't ignore people to death, is what I'm saying. And at the same time that we can't ignore people to death, we can't be inappropriately activist and come from a place of ignorance and make it worse.
Broomfield says there's a movement happening, Indigenous people advocating for themselves and others, even from behind bars.
I'm kindly asking to meet with you as I would like to talk to you about my experience in the Inel correctional system.
Last November, Semiak started writing, sent letters to the Ministers of Justice, Health, and the Superintendent of Prisons.
I would like to share with you where I come from and how I grew up to help you understand how the correctional system has not been helpful to me over the years and how it can be changed to better help Inuit people. The Minister of Justice, he don't realize what he's doing to Indigenous people.
He wants sweeping changes tailored for Indigenous people. It starts, he says, by understanding what Inuit have been through and the ongoing discrimination they still face.
We should get more program in here for like land base, keep people connected to their culture, to their language, to their people, to their elders.
I think it's really a powerful thing. I like to see Inuit and Indigenous people taking more of a voice for themselves and speaking up and challenging any type of service or system that they don't feel is working for them.
I think it's good that people who are experiencing it would try to analyze it and suggest ways to improve it and reflect on it. I think so. I think that probably needs to happen, and I think there probably are no one better situated than an Indigenous person who's experiencing it, right? Because otherwise it just repeats the previous pattern.
For Semiak, this moment is a step towards breaking the pattern. Here in Hopedale, he's taking part in a sentencing circle. There hasn't been one in Labrador for at least the last 5 years. It's where he'll try to make amends, to say sorry, to start anew. Community members and elders will gather as he apologizes to his sister, his partner, his community. Semiak is pledging to work towards sobriety, a future his children can be proud of. But he's a symptom of a greater issue. The group says trauma goes untreated throughout the North Coast. Mental health workers cycle through the community, and without consistent support, there can be no solution. In the crowd, new friends of Semiak who came to support, listen, and learn.
I think it's a huge step moving forward for our community to process things moving forward, and it's a great building tool.
And for him to own it. Yep. Opportunity to ask for forgiveness and say he's sorry for what he did. It's amazing.
Just the start of healing for anybody. Yeah. Just to say it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to the community for what happened with my brother and what I put my family through, what I put my kids through. I just want to say I'm really sorry for everything.
For Semiak, this was closing the circle.
I feel a lot better now since the community heard me and heard what I had to say, and I feel a lot more lighter. And I just want this done and over with and get it behind me now. So I'm really glad the hard part is over.
Semiak knows this is just the start and that a long road awaits him.
So my hope is for when I get out, see if I can get some funding from Nuntsao to help me open up a carving shop to help young people for their for like a therapy. Let them come down and tell them their story for how they was growing up. Let them take it out on the rock. Let them tell their story in the rock.
Earlier this month, Semiak was sentenced to 3.5 years for his role in his brother's death, minus time served. He has 2 years of probation and some unique conditions. 100 hours community service to do things like helping elders in Hopedale. He must stay clean and sober and create a carving, something that illustrates what he is like when he's sober and when he's not. His creation must be presented to the court, and Justice Stacey Ryan hopes he'll display it proudly for others.
I want my community to know who I really am instead of just an alcoholic. I want to break the cycle for what my father went through. I know I can break the cycle.
Heidi Adder, CBC News, Hopedale.
Well, time for a look at the weather and looking ahead to the long-range forecast and already looking to the weekend, Friday and Saturday.
Friday and Saturday are in our 2 and 3 day outlook now, and we'll still have some precipitation sticking around on Friday. Saturday looking like a bit of a better day for at least some areas.
Okay, that's good.
It's a bit mixed. Let's take a look. So Thursday evening, we're going to see that snow still sticking around and the rain still sticking around and the mix still sticking around here for central and east. And as we get into the overnight on Friday, it's going to swirl around a bit. But by Friday afternoon, it looks like we should have basically some cloud and some variable cloud over the island and into Labrador as well. But it's not going to last forever, of course. So we see the rain snow mix icons for central. We could have some showers for Avalon and Burin peninsulas, temperatures between 1 and 6 degrees. But look at this for the west coast. It warms up a little bit with the sun and cloud that you have. Temperatures of 10 degrees forecast for Corner Brook and 9 for the southwest coast. Not a bad day at all in Labrador either. 10 here for Happy Valley Goose Bay, cooler along the north coast. But in Lab West, a bit cooler than Happy Valley Goose Bay. You could see some clouds there at 5 degrees. As we go into Friday evening, we'll see some showers and possibly flurries start to move over Labrador into Saturday morning, and they're going to come our way as we head Saturday in the overnight. So we see either showers or flurries for much of Labrador. Fairly warm temperatures though, 5 for Lab West, 9 for central Labrador, and not bad there on the coast. And temperatures, also pretty seasonal for the west coast, but we will pick up a chance of showers for the south coast and for the west coast here as well. Cloud for the rest of the island. We get a little bit of a reprieve from the precipitation. Temperatures between 5 and 8 degrees in through the Avalon, Bonavista, Burin peninsulas, and central Newfoundland. As we go on to the 5-day now, we do have a few precipitation-y icons here. Things warming up, though, as we get to Monday, which will be your nice day with some sun and cloud. In through central, it looks very similar to the forecast for the island. A bit more sun for the west coast. Thursday, Friday looking good. Saturday, Sunday, not so much. Monday looking decent, though, when you go back to work for the Monday to Fridays, people. Eastern Labrador, you've got the best of it there, looking like showers or flurries on Saturday. Same thing for Lab West. You could see a flurry additionally there on Monday. And look at this. Another sign of spring in Newfoundland.
Love to see the icebergs.
Iceberg season. And that is a 65-foot boat there, I think Linda said in her email. So it's a pretty big boat.
Yeah, where is this?
This is on the north coast of the island where they're going to get all that snow, near Twillingate, I believe. But yeah, so they're starting to come our way. And if you have any beautiful photos like this, of course, send them our way. And we love to see them. And the email to do so is nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Yeah, and it's great so we can show other people, and then folks who are traveling around know where to go to check out the iceberg, so it's a good thing all around.
Indeed.
So, and it looks like we just have to get through tomorrow, really, and then things are looking up a bit, bit more, hey,
Exactly.
temperature-wise and stuff. So just got to get through a bit of that snow tomorrow, and all good. All right, well, that is it for us. Thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us.
Good night. Put the email address over the boat. I was like, no.